What's up guys, this video is about structured logging. We're going to use Serilog, which is one of the most popular NuGet packages for structured logging. You might ask why. Simply to take more control over your output logging. Like I mentioned in the previous video, you could write your own custom logger, change the structure and the colors however you like, but you're kind of reinventing the wheel since there's already really powerful libraries out there like Serilog that can have just very powerful capabilities. We'll dive into those in this video. We're going to really highlight some very useful capabilities of Serilog, which might go beyond most of the getting started Serilog videos you'll see. Real world implementation is what I'll give you. So we're going to do all that into a .NET Core Web API project. And I'm thrilled to do this video because I've been postponing features like structured logging, improving my code bases with those capabilities. So let's get into it. We'll quickly browse over the documentation page just to get it out of the way. I'm not just going to copy this page like you might see in most videos. Just know there's if you're not working in a .NET Core project and some other type of project, and you can't access this builder.host, or if that's your scenario, you can create a logger like that. You can either just say var logger equals new logger configuration and create that logger, or you can access this static instance of Serilog and maybe you can then configure it once and reuse that one throughout your application project. But we're going to use this builder.host use Serilog implementation, and we'll probably return to the request logging later. But this is basically how we are going to implement it. See, you can use this nice fluent API of Serilog. So let's go to the code. Before we build the app, we say builder.host use Serilog. For that we need the NuGet packages. Let me get those. So normally you'd install these three packages, Serilog and those, but we're going to use the ASP.NET Core. Let's see if that's enough, if that might be implicitly installing the other ones. Oops. I'm going to take the .NET 6 version. Feel free to take .NET 7 if you're there yet. Install it into my API. Maybe I'll have to downgrade even more to 6.0.0. Let's see. Okay, that's installed. Let's see if we can now use these things. Seems about right. Okay. This first line, read from configuration, is to say read our configuration from the app settings. We're going to keep that line. Then read from services. I don't think I need. Don't think I'm going to use that one. Then you see enrich. You have two major concepts in Serilog, that's sinks and enrichments. Enrichments are basically going to make your logs richer, so add some useful data to your log. That could be a machine name, the user, IP, whatever, stuff like that. Could also be a trace ID or a correlation ID. Yeah, could be some things like that. From log context is, let's just leave it on for now, but it's gonna enrich our logs with some extra context. Write to console is to still write to the debug console that we're used to. So we'll see that in the terminal. We'll talk more about that write to console later on. So we can even leave the services out, if I'm not mistaken. And let's try it out. I started two APIs. This one because I'll need to authorize in a bit. But you see this one still has the plain, the out-of-the-box logger configuration. And then where I applied Serilog, you have these output logs. If we quickly look at the difference, the first thing you'll see is the Serilog logs are more condensed. They try to put everything on one line, which can be cost beneficial in the long term. Also, there's not too much color, which probably doesn't really matter once you deploy. Once you put this online in Application Insights or any other logging application, you probably won't really see these colors. This one's multi-line, which maybe it's a myth, but they say the more logs, the more the cost. So multi-line logs will in the end cost more. That's at least what they say. And then we already see some requests. Just from the Swagger. And also see how long it took. The status code, the content type, the char, so some of the headers probably. That it's sent over HTTP, the get method is called. Yeah, that's just for loading the Swagger. You don't see that in this one. So that's probably because we added straight away the ASP.NET Core logging package. I was trying to find what the fromlog context actually does, but it seems to just allow to push your own context properties. So if you want to enrich your logs, you can do that with some custom keys and values. You can do that. And then there's a list of some other enrichers, environment, process, thread, that's going to enrich the logs with more details about these things, like the process ID and all those kind of things. Machine name, environment name, IP will probably also be possible. With client info, with client IP, correlation ID, with some headers. This sensitive enricher we'll talk about in a bit. That's going to be a very, very useful one. And probably one of the reasons we're going for Serilog. So yeah, that's good to know. I don't think I need this from log context right now, so let's just leave it out right now. Also, I prefer to configure everything in the app settings, so I will try to keep this code as minimal as possible, just to read configuration. The write to console we're gonna kind of get rid of later on when we're using Application Insights. Yeah, so removing that from log context didn't really change much initially then first glance, because it was yeah, some kind, yeah. It's not like we lost any context information, not that I can see. And these are all request logs, so okay, so we can almost start with the app settings configuration. This I'm going to write this way because later on we'll have to change something in here. Something I learned, a little trick. We'll talk about it in a bit. We're going to start with this enricher. This is the masking, the sensitive enricher, which is very useful. It's also a question I've had multiple times, if it was possible. It was kind of hard to do with your own logging implementation or just the iLogger itself. So it's a very powerful feature that we have this. We can enrich it with the Fluent API, but I already mentioned I want to configure that in the app settings and keep this code as this program CS code as minimal as possible. It's good to know there's some there's some masking active by default. It's going to automatically add try to mask email addresses, IBAN, bank account numbers, which is very nice. You can set the mask value. So the point of this is, let's say someone's authenticating with my application and I'm getting the logs, and potentially their password would just be written in plain text because they posted their user credentials to the API, and the API has some logging in there, so that wouldn't be too secure. The same for sensitive bank details. If you were to store them, you don't want to see those return into the logs. Especially, if other people start working in your code base or accessing the log outputs, which is a common scenario. So this is what we're looking for, the Serilog app settings notation. Let's see these. I'm going to paste those in my development app settings because I don't want to share my production settings with you on public video. I haven't installed the NuGet package, so let's do that first. NuGet Serilog. Let's Serilog.enricher. And then you have a whole list of enrichers you can try out. It's actually fun to try them all out and see what they can add to your logs, which useful details they can enrich your logs with. Let's see. We need the sensitive enrichers. Sensitive. Okay, this one. Let's add that. I have done all this before, but I don't have it on this computer. My previous laptop crashed and the code wasn't mine to reuse anyway. I did write it, but it was for a ex-employer. This mask value will just set to 3 asterisks. Exclude properties will be password. What else? Some are included by default. Let's just start with password and maybe just put test for now to test. Let's run it and try it out. Yeah, this is an issue I keep falling for every time I implement this, and I thought this would happen again. Exclude properties is not actually masking the properties. It's if we read the documentation, it's actually saying exclude properties is when we don't want a property to ever be masked, if I'm not mistaken. So when it's by default masked, such as the default masking happens for email, bank addresses, information like that, then you can do exclude properties to prevent that from happening, to override that default. So what I was looking for was this mask properties, but you don't seem to have that in the app settings. I'll copy paste that in a bit. Because here it says it may be that you never want to mask the value of a property regardless if it matches the pattern of the masking operators. In that case, you can specify the property is never masked. So exclude properties, add email. That's what we just did in the app settings, which is actually the opposite of what we want to, what we're trying to get. An important thing in here is pattern matching. That's very important. Serilog does pattern matching to know whether a bank account number is actually a bank account number or if it's something else, whether an email address is an email address, and so on. So it's capable to, thanks to this pattern matching, to mask actual email addresses and those sensitive data, even without them being included in the like just written flat as text. For example, if I would say, I think so, test123@gmail.com, it's probably able to mask that because of, thanks to pattern matching. And I was trying out these two just in case, to see if the configuration was already applied or if we have to use the static instance in the program CS. I don't think so. But first let's fix this. This should be mask properties, I think. It keeps happening every time I implement this. I copy the only example of app settings and then it's kind of screws me over. Mask properties, so let's rerun that. So if we take a look at the first log output in here, the warning, so it does have color, it's just condensed. Logging some sensitive data. This is thanks to this pattern matching. This is the test123@gmail.com email address. It's able to detect. But if I were to say password in here, password 123, yeah, let's say just equals 123 or something, it's not going to be able to do that because that's just flat text and there's no real pattern for a password. So that's why it's very, very important once you start with structured logging and monitoring that you try to avoid string interpolation and just those kind of practices. It's the good practice to always add your variables as arguments. I did stress this already in the previous video a bit ahead of time, but it's very, very important to just have this as a practice. That said, it doesn't seem to be masking the actual password and properties I wanted to. So let's see what the beep is going on there. Okay, it's possibly because I'm making an object. So what happens, it's probably something with JSON serialization, that it's getting double serialized, and for that reason not able to detect or to destruct those things. But nah, this shouldn't be the case. Okay, I found my issue. I keep falling for it. So if you have some kind of multi-line or multi-value object, you have to append this name with an sign, an symbol argument. If you're just working with just simple variables that just have a simple value, then you can specify the argument names like password and tests, and then they will be masked. And then the example below is the object logging with some sensitive data, name, Tom, password, and test. Quickly made it just a simple user class. So Tom test 1, 2, 3. So that's basically how it works. The masking. It's a very powerful feature, but feel free to experiment with it. I'm not going to make this video too long. So the next thing would be application insights, and maybe some other features, powerful features. Let's see, I opened this sample from the app settings. There's a lot of configuration possibilities. You can alter output templates. This is actually really cool to experiment with. Feel free to do so. I'm just quickly scanning to know if I didn't miss anything. So things.console. So actually this one we will let's think about it. Scrolling down, I see enrich from log context with thread ID. So yeah, that from log context will be prerequisite for this, to access this thread ID, to access the log context details. Let's see if there's other useful stuff. A lot of things you can do. You can write filters, but we're keeping it simple. So let's just try out an output format. I think we'll have to so we can probably just say write to console and then use that output format, or do that in the program CS, which I don't prefer. I'm not going to spend too much more time on this, but the cool thing about these output templates is that you can destructure these properties and really only show the details that you want. And know that you can enrich these logs with many different details. We might enrich the logs with maybe a trace ID or correlation ID, but I'm going to keep that for later. I first want to see what application insights will provide us with, which details we'll see there. That again you can, so a sync is basically writing to somewhere, so to the console or to a file or to some open source project like SEQ or a cloud provider like application insights. You can write to all those things. We did forget this minimum level. Let's add that in. And that means we can get rid of the original logging configuration. since we're now using Serilog. So that would be ignored anyway. Let's see, we're just gonna paste it in. And as mentioned in the previous video, it works the same. Wait a sec. What is happening? Yep, something like this. You can override the severity of the logs you want to see, which you want to filter out. You can put that in here. Let's say information, and then these might be more like warnings. You could change it for AspNetCore. Okay, let's quickly go over the HTTP request logging and why I'm not going to use it. Basically the same reason as in previous video. It's not that easy to log the request bodies since they're in stream. You have to read those streams in memory, log them, and then you're basically going to read that stream out twice if you're not careful, and that's going to impact the performance. Reading the stream twice, I mean once just to log it, and then another, and then it's going to be read in the controller method again. So yeah, it's not that ideal. Okay, so I think we're good to go. We installed that package at the start of the video, and let's now this is actually interesting. Try catching whether your app was successful to run, and if something happens you can already use the static instance of Serilog to start logging potential errors, but let's not focus on that. So this is basically what you're gonna get as output, more or less, the template. Let's add that line. Oh, come on. And if I remember correctly, you should add this line before anything else or after everything, to prevent having more logs than necessary. But yeah, maybe I'm just fantasizing, making stuff up. No, it does say something about it. It's important that the use request logging call appears before handlers such as MVC. The middleware will not time or log components that appear before it in the pipeline. Use static files. So you should place the request logging after potential noisy, much producing log middlewares. Let's see, I placed it fairly at the top, and I'm seeing less logs than I saw before. I'm not seeing the swagger. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Let's find out. Calling an endpoint, it seems to output even the SQL queries because I used add db context. It's automatically plugged in, so to say. So I probably can override that in the app settings to not see this. At least there's no sensitive data in here, since I didn't enable sensitive logging in the db context. And then we see our requests, and it's an info log get veterinarians responded 200, and then the time it took. So mostly the first call to the database takes a while, so 2.3 seconds. That's way too long. So let's try that again. That's only 18 milliseconds. That's way better. So that's kind of working. But then again, the issue in the previous video that I highlighted about the request bodies and the response bodies, which most people would expect to be able to log with this middleware, and that is not the case. Unless, like I already mentioned, you read out those streams and impact your performance. But the point of this was just to show you that you can enable request logging with Serilog. And it makes it a bit easier to log request data. But it's not ideal. Let's see. So you could add some properties. You can enrich your logs with some details from the request if you need to, but you can't just log the request body. So that would work in the similar way as above, setting a property of request body, and you can actually see in here at http context.request.body, and you can see the type is a stream. So you should have to read it synchronously probably, which is gonna impact it even more. The performance. So yeah, that's not a good idea, but yeah, you can. Let's just run this and see what happens. This is gonna change the message template of the requests logging. I think okay, I'm not seeing much, probably maybe because of the debug level. Let's not waste any more time on that. Serilog makes things more powerful and easier to do. And the last thing I wanted to do is application insights. That's an important part, and application insight itself will probably be for next video, but let's just set it up in here. So here is the package Serilog. This is a sync because we're going to write to another application. You can use the Fluent API to configure that, but again, we're not going to. We're just going to use this app settings. These app settings. You can read some more in what the sync submits. So which data is going to application insights. Trace telemetry, event telemetry, exception telemetry. I'm not sure if we need to include this from log context for better logs. Yeah, that's also good to know. The connection string can be omitted if it's supplied in the application insights connection string environment variable. So you can just set that on the which should be there, I think, on most app services. automatically. So maybe we don't even need to copy the connection string. It's good to know. That's one secret less. So let's hop over in the code. I just pasted that right to application insights. I'm going to omit the connection string, trace telemetry, and I haven't actually installed this package yet. Let's try it. Let's pick a stable one. And we should be good to go. I'm going to push this, deploy this, and see if anything comes out. And then we'll continue with those outputs in the next video. One thing I forgot to mention is once you're using application insights, so now I'm in the app settings of development purely because I don't want you to see my other secrets. Normally you would put the Serilog in the app settings, and then once you deploy it, so the app settings is for the production environment, once you deploy it, that should work, fingers crossed. What I wanted to say is once you're using something else, like writing to something other than the console, you don't really need the console anymore. The console is mainly for local development or for development or debug purposes. It's even, I think I read it somewhere that it's expensive to log to the console, to output to the console once it's on an app service. If that's true, yeah, it's just something to keep in mind. So it would also be double if you were to write to the application insights and then also to the console. It's not necessary. So there's two ways to go about that because we don't want to lose the console logging when we're running locally. So we could either do it's a little trick, something like this, wrap this in the debug region. I'm not sure how this was, yeah, I should look it up, but it's something like this, which tells you when we're in development we want to write to console, when we're not in development mode we don't want to write to console. Yeah, this is not a proper syntax, but it's something along those lines. Let me look it up in a bit. The reason we do it like that and not in the app.environment is development, because we cannot access that yet in the builder.host. So another method would be, of course, to use the app settings.development and the app settings for production and to just overwrite this write to value. I think that should work. So if in the development settings you would say write to console, and then you would need the sync, the console sync. That would be a possibility. Oops. I think that's a possibility, or you could just simply do it like that. Yeah, let's not waste time on that. If you know the syntax, if you know what I'm trying to do here, please comment. I don't prefer this method since in all other cases we're just overwriting things with the app settings. I'm just going to go for that one. So then we can actually remove this write to console and even these brackets. And one line that. Oops. Yeah, something like that should do. Keep it as small as possible, this configuration. That said, let's just add the console since I didn't do that yet. Sinks.console. Stable version. Then we need to use that in the Serilog.sinks.console. And then we'll have another write to section. Let's include this in here. I don't know what the arguments would be. Maybe we can just, I think we can just do this. Console. And if you need arguments, you would prefer that notation. If we run this now, we'll probably see duplicated logging. Maybe, no. Only if we still had to write the console in here. Let's try it. Oops. Doesn't matter. What does matter is this SQL statement. I don't like it that much, but it's okay because it's an info statement that shouldn't be reflected in the production logs. If we configure everything correctly. So to turn off these EF-core logs, so to filter those out, we could set the Microsoft one to warning, but we see almost no logs anymore. So also the app starting logs are gone, everything seems to be gone, even the requests logs, of course, because we didn't trigger a warning. For production purposes, a warning would be a good level. For development, you're better off with information or debug. This Microsoft one, now we're probably, yeah, that's very general. So I think we can do like in the previous video. I'm not sure if it's EF-core or entity framework core. It should be entity framework core. I just checked my own previous video to make sure. Let's test it. Yeah, so we do see the system logs, so the app started in the development environment, and I just executed an endpoint. And we are not seeing the DB stuff anymore. Also AspNet core, so the HTTP stuff is set to warning, so we're not seeing that either. This might be the reason why we didn't see the request logging middleware outputs before. It's probably we filtered that out. So what I'm going to do is move the application inside stuff to the production one and maybe tweak these settings. What you can do is experiment with all the enrichers. That's actually pretty fun to do and see what is useful for you. I might return to that, but not anymore in this video. I'm first going to check out what I'm currently getting with this setup in the application insights. What I also want to do is, if it's useful for you, just make a sample project with these settings and make it available on my Patreon, which I made yesterday. Okay, I quickly tested it out. I moved all that we configured before. I moved that to the app settings for production purposes, so the application inside stuff. And then I noticed I had to override the Serilog settings for development to log to console. I noticed if I want to have the sensitive masking stuff in here, I have to also put it in here, because now we're just overwriting Serilog with these values. It's not like because it's defined in the app settings that it's going to not be overwritten. But yeah, do you really need masking in local development? I don't think so. It's only your own or your team. Yeah, maybe your team's, and you're not saving the logs, so yeah, it's not really that critical. What I did do is I changed all of these to information, so I'm not accidentally hiding any logs on development, and for the production this is all set to warning. I think I can end the video with that. I also I just installed this things.console, which was probably already implicitly installed, but yeah, now we have it explicitly as well. That is all. Thanks for watching. That was all for this video. I assume it's a long video again. My apologies. I'm trying to hit 500 subscribers so I can directly ask the subscriber base what is interesting to you. So please subscribe if you didn't already. See you in the next video about application insights. That will show us the output of what we did right now in this video.